Hey guys, I wanted to share a little bit of this lift program. I've been in it for the past 2 years and gone through it a couple times, and I've just gotten so much from it. And I wanted to share, a little bit about its uniqueness, as well as a little bit of my own personal story. And so this might take maybe 5-10 minutes. So one of the things that stands out about the lift program for me is that that it shifts its focus from more of that traditional approach. Um, and, a lot of Western medicine takes the approach of more of the behaviors and symptoms, and, which can be helpful, but it often doesn't really fully address what's driving the behaviors underneath. And so the lift program takes kind of a different approach by focusing more on that developmental trauma and nervous system and the responses there. So instead of just asking what someone is doing, it helps people understand why they're reacting the way they are. That includes things like stress responses, emotional triggers, and patterns in relationships, and how the nervous system has adapted over time. This lines up with what we now understand about repeated experiences, especially in early life, that can shape our responses in ways that are automatic and not fully conscious. We just, boom, doing it. And so this brings awareness to those patterns, and it's a key part of creating real change, right? And so at that same time, it's easy for people to move forward in blaming parents and caregivers when they begin to understand developmental trauma. So that pain becomes real and they want to pass that on to someone. But while those influences are real, most caregivers were doing the best that they could with the tools they have. Remember, we didn't have this science, 50 years ago, right? And so, I guess staying in the blame, to me, if you stay in the blame game, there is no getting out of that hole. You have to overcome that, take accountability, and growing agency, right? And start making better choices is the process. So we can't keep blaming people, and this program really focuses on that. So the program also encourages, instead of it focuses on taking personal responsibility in a healthy way, not blame, but ownership, right? And so the idea of becoming the one who breaks patterns rather than continues them, learning to regulate, communicate, and show up differently in relationships, especially with their own children. It's like super awesome, the awareness that this brings. So this is a little bit about kind of my own journey. So my own journey through faith has been deeply impactful. If it wasn't for my faith, I would have never found this program. And so it changed my perspective and gave me direction. But I found that there was another layer underneath that I hadn't dealt with. I was trying to move forward without fully understanding what was driving my reactions. That kind of change didn't last. I would fall back into the same patterns because the root issue was still there. So it's like pulling up a weed in your yard, and if you don't get the root of it, that weed just grows right back, right? And so I was using affirmations, like I said, just really shortcut tricks to achieve this healing, or putting a wand in God's hands, like, God, why aren't you healing me? Why do I think I'm defective? These types of things. God doesn't remove the maturing process. As James says, he gives us tools, and we are to ask, seek, and knock. And so this journey really is about doing it with Christ. At least that's how it's been for me in my journey. And I think that everyone should have a spiritual aspect of meeting their own needs in their own way. But anyways, what Lyft helped me do was slow down and actually see those deeper layers, right? Things like the shame and identity, and the patterns that I'd been carrying for years and not even realizing it. That awareness just changed everything. Knowing the difference between guilt and shame were huge. It also shaped my why. I have a strong desire to protect children, especially those that don't have a voice or the ability to defend themselves. When you look back at the data, it becomes even more real. Millions of children experience abuse each year, whether it's physical, emotional, or sexual. Research also shows that early childhood advisory is strongly connected to long-term mental health challenges, including anxiety, depression, and identity struggles. Abandonment, all right? This is a big one. I mean, abandonment, when you hear the word abandonment, you should think of divorce rates in America and how, people are having kids and divorce and just the damage, the massive damage that does to a child. So abandonment and inconsistent caregiving in particular can deeply affect a child's sense of self and the safety in the world. So those patterns don't just disappear with age, they often carry into adulthood unless they're understood and addressed. So when adults begin to understand their own developmental patterns and take responsibility for their healing, it changes what gets passed down to their kids, right? It stops that cycle. It's an end to it, not through blame, but through awareness and intentional change, right? It's not, well, for me, this program has been a big part of that. It helped me understand the difference between guilt and shame and how much I was living a cycle of shame, self-shame, right? Without even recognizing or realizing it. Once I could see that clearly, I could begin to respond differently instead of staying stuck in it. And to me, that's where the real hope is, not just managing symptoms, right? But actually understanding the root and choosing to live differently and moving forward. So thanks for listening. And if any of you guys have questions, please shoot me a message. I'd be happy to give you my phone number. Maybe we could have a coffee or just give me a buzz, whatever. I'd love to give you more info if you're interested.